It was supposed to be a light night, a couch, a smile, a few harmless jokes, and a friendly audience ready to laugh. But by the end of the show, the laughter would die first, then the applause. And finally, Meghan Markle would stand up, stare straight ahead, and walk off Jimmy Fallon's stage, leaving behind a stunned host, a silent crowd, and a moment late-night television would never forget. No shouting, no insults, just a slow public unraveling, triggered by a few jokes that were never meant to hurt, and reactions that made everything explode. The studio lights of The Tonight Show glowed warm and familiar, casting that unmistakable late-night comfort over the stage. The band wrapped up their intro, the audience clapped in rhythm, and Jimmy Fallon walked out with his usual boyish grin, waving as if nothing in the world could ever go wrong here. Thank you, Jimmy said, soaking in the applause. We have an incredible show tonight, music later, games later, but first, please welcome someone everyone knows, everyone talks about, Meghan Markle. The applause swelled as Meghan stepped onto the stage. Her smile was practiced, perfectly calibrated for cameras. She waved once, then twice, acknowledging the crowd without fully engaging them. This wasn't excitement. This was control. Jimmy stood to greet her, leaning in for a friendly hug. Meghan accepted it briefly, stiffly, then sat down on the couch with a smooth motion, crossing her legs and placing her hands neatly in her lap. "So good to have you here," Jimmy said warmly. "Thanks for coming." "Thank you for having me," Meghan replied, her voice calm, almost airy. But there was something else underneath it, an alertness, a readiness, like she was already bracing for something. Jimmy noticed it. He always noticed things like that, but he smiled anyway. The first few minutes were exactly what everyone expected. They talked about her latest projects, her foundation, her advocacy work, the importance of telling your story on your own terms. Meghan spoke confidently, fluently, like someone repeating lines she'd said many times before, but still believing in every word. Jimmy nodded along, adding gentle affirmations. "That's amazing," he said. "That's so important." "I love that." The audience applauded politely at the right moments, but Meghan didn't relax. Even as the conversation flowed, her posture stayed rigid. Her smile flickered on and off, never fully settling. When Jimmy joked lightly about how busy she must be, Meghan corrected him. "Well, busy is relative," she said. "I make time for what matters." "Of course," Jimmy replied quickly, chuckling. "You seem very organized." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then Jimmy shifted slightly in his seat, glancing at his cue cards. "So," he said casually, "people always say you're very careful about how you present yourself. Publicly, like very careful." The audience laughed softly. Meghan's head tilted just a fraction. "I'm intentional," she said. "There's a difference." Jimmy raised his hands in mock surrender. "Fair, totally fair. Intentional is good." The laugh track rolled again, but this time it felt thinner. Jimmy leaned forward, keeping his tone playful. "I read somewhere, and you can tell me if this is wrong, that you don't really love unscripted moments, like surprises." A few audience members chuckled. Meghan didn't. "I don't think anyone loves being misrepresented," she said. Her voice was still calm, but the warmth was gone. "Spontaneity is great when it's respectful." Jimmy nodded, trying to keep things light. "Absolutely, though this is a talk show, so we do thrive on a little chaos." That got a bigger laugh. Meghan adjusted slightly on the couch. "Well," she said, smiling tightly, "chaos has a way of following people who invite it." Jimmy blinked, just once. He laughed, unsure whether that was a joke or a warning. "Fair enough." The band chuckled politely. Jimmy glanced at the audience, then back at Meghan. "You've done so many interviews over the years. Do you ever miss just talking, like not having to explain everything?" There it was. The room shifted. Meghan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She held her smile, but her fingers curled together. "I don't explain myself," she said. "I clarify misinformation." The audience murmured. Jimmy raised his eyebrows slightly, still smiling. "Got it. Clarifying. That's very different." The laugh came late, awkward. Meghan leaned back now, crossing her arms loosely. "It's interesting how often people frame self-expression as defensiveness." Jimmy nodded slowly. True, though sometimes people also wonder, when does sharing become, over-explaining? The audience laughed again, this time louder. Meghan didn't laugh at all. She turned to face Jimmy fully. Are you asking me a question or repeating something you've heard? The smile on Jimmy's face froze for half a second before he recovered. I'm just asking, he said gently. This is what people at home are curious about. Meghan held his gaze. People at home are curious because they're told to be, she replied. Curiosity is manufactured. The room went quiet. Jimmy chuckled softly, trying to diffuse it. Well, I promise, no manufacturing here, just curiosity. Meghan's lips pressed together. She nodded once. Slowly. Okay, she said. Then let's be clear. The audience leaned forward. Jimmy sensed it now. This wasn't a warm-up anymore. This was the edge of something else, something sharp, and the show had only just begun. Jimmy felt it in his gut, the way you feel weather changing. Nothing visible yet, but the air suddenly heavier. His grin kept the rhythm, kept the tone light, because late night only works if the host looks like he's in control. Meghan sat perfectly still beside him, eyes focused, expression polished, yet somehow sharper than it had been 5 minutes ago. The audience was quiet now in that attentive way that wasn't admiration, but anticipation. Jimmy tapped his cue cards once. Okay, he said with a friendly laugh. We're gonna do something fun, not a game, just a little segment we call Two Truths and a Rumor. A ripple of laughter. Meghan's smile tightened. A rumor? Jimmy shrugged innocently. It's all harmless, and you can shut it down, which is kind of the whole point. Meghan nodded slowly, as if considering whether harmless was a real word. Jimmy read the first line. Truth. You're actually very good at impressions. Meghan blinked. I'm fine. The audience chuckled. Jimmy leaned into it. Truth. You can do a perfect British accent. A bigger laugh, because of course she could. Meghan's eyes didn't smile. I lived there, she said. It's not a trick. Jimmy grinned. Fair. Okay, rumor. He paused dramatically, milking it like he always did. Rumor, you have a no surprises clause for any interview. And if someone goes off script, there's a person whose job is to... Meghan cut in immediately. Stop. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it hit the room like a lid snapping shut. Jimmy blinked, still smiling. Stop as in, like, don't read it? Meghan's expression stayed composed, but the tone was ice. Stop as in, that's exactly the kind of framing I'm talking about. The audience gave a soft, ooh, the kind they couldn't hold back. Jimmy laughed lightly, trying to keep oxygen in the room. Okay. Hey, we'll skip it. I don't want to... It's not about you wanting to, Meghan said, still calm, still controlled. It's about what you're participating in. The band didn't play. No one moved. Even the cameras felt like they tightened. Jimmy's smile thinned. I hear you, I do. But this is a comedy show. We tease everyone. Meghan tilted her head. Everyone isn't me. There was no anger in the sentence, which somehow made it worse. Jimmy tried to pivot fast, like a driver swerving away from black ice. Totally. So, new topic. Your charity work. You've been... Meghan nodded, but her eyes stayed locked on him. You can ask about that, or you can ask about what you actually want to ask. The audience's laughter died completely, replaced by a tense hush. Somewhere in the back, someone coughed and immediately regretted it. Jimmy forced a chuckle. I want to ask about the charity. I'm not... You're not, Meghan repeated softly as if testing the words. Okay. That single okay sounded like she didn't believe him at all. Jimmy glanced toward the band for help. No help came. He swallowed, still performing. All right, he said, leaning forward slightly. Then let's talk about the thing you care about. Impact. What's something you're proud of? Like, recently? Meghan's smile returned for half a second. I'm proud that I don't need to manufacture an image of kindness. I live it. The audience clapped, uncertain, polite, a little nervous. Jimmy nodded. That's great, and I know you get a lot of attention, good and bad. Does it ever feel like you can't win? Meghan exhaled through her nose. Winning isn't the point. Being truthful is. Right, Jimmy said quickly. But you know what I mean? Like, people say things, headlines say things. Meghan leaned in, just a little. Headlines don't happen by magic, Jimmy. He paused. No, of course not. They happen because someone benefits from them, Meghan said, and because people repeat them. Jimmy's mouth opened, then closed. He gave a small laugh, hoping it would soften the edge. I mean, you're not wrong, but I'm not exactly a tabloid. Meghan's eyes flicked down to his cue cards, then back up. No, you're just a platform. The audience murmured again, low, uneasy. Jimmy tried to keep it playful. A platform with snacks backstage. A few people laughed, but it was scattered, like applause in the wrong place at the wrong time. Meghan didn't laugh. She glanced toward the audience, then back at Jimmy. They're laughing because they think this is still light. Jimmy nodded quickly. It is light. It's not, Meghan said. Not for me. The words landed hard, and suddenly the room wasn't watching a celebrity interview anymore. It was watching a negotiation. One person trying to keep things charming, the other rewriting the rules mid-sentence. Jimmy shifted in his seat, smile still there, but strained. Okay, then help me. What do you want this to be? Meghan's expression softened, almost, just enough to make the audience think the storm might pass. I want it to be honest, she said, but not performative. Jimmy nodded. I can do honest. Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly. Can you? The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. Jimmy cleared his throat, forced a brighter tone. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, more with Meghan Markle. The band finally played. The audience clapped, but it sounded like they were clapping because the moment needed a sound, not because they felt good. As the cameras faded, Jimmy leaned slightly toward Meghan with a friendly whisper meant to calm her. Meghan didn't look at him. She looked past him, toward the offstage area, toward someone the audience couldn't see. And her lips moved as she said something that didn't reach the microphones, but made a nearby producer go pale. When the cameras came back, it wouldn't be about jokes anymore. It would be about control, and who was about to lose it first. When the cameras came back up, the applause sounded thinner, polite, dutiful, uncertain. Jimmy Fallon stepped back into frame with the same smile he always wore, but it was tighter now, stretched like a rubber band pulled a little too far. We're back with Meghan Markle, he said brightly. Still here. The audience chuckled, some of them. Others stayed quiet. Meghan sat perfectly upright on the couch, legs crossed, hands resting together. Her posture was immaculate. Her expression was not. The smile was gone. In its place, composure sharpened into something defensive. Jimmy turned toward her. All right, fresh start, clean slate. Meghan nodded once. Good. Jimmy inhaled lightly, as if stepping onto thin ice. I want to ask you something, not as a joke, just honestly. She raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. He chose his words carefully. Do you ever feel like the pressure to explain yourself, to correct every narrative, becomes exhausting? The audience leaned in. Meghan didn't answer immediately. She looked out toward the crowd, then back to Jimmy. What's exhausting, she said slowly, is watching people pretend curiosity is neutral. Jimmy blinked. Let me finish, Meghan added calmly. He nodded, hands up. Of course. Curiosity, she continued, is rarely innocent. It's shaped by power, by bias, by who gets to ask questions and who's expected to answer them. The room was silent now. No laughter, no band, just listening. Jimmy tried to keep his tone gentle. I hear that, but this show, this space, is meant to be friendly. Meghan smiled faintly. Friendly to whom? A murmur rolled through the audience. Jimmy chuckled nervously. I mean, to everyone. Meghan tilted her head. That's the problem with everyone. It usually means the loudest people in the room. Jimmy shifted. I don't think anyone here is trying to... I know you don't, Meghan interrupted. Intent and impact are different things. There it was again, the phrase, the one that felt less like an explanation and more like a verdict. Jimmy paused. He was still smiling, but the smile had changed. It was smaller, more careful. Okay, he said. Then let's talk impact. Meghan nodded. Finally, Jimmy leaned forward, elbows on his knees. There are people who feel, fairly or unfairly, that every time you speak, you frame yourself as misunderstood. Do you worry that message gets lost when people feel talked down to? The audience sucked in a collective breath. Meghan stared at him. For a long second, she said nothing. Talked down to? She repeated. Jimmy nodded. That's what some people say. Some people say a lot of things, Meghan replied coolly. Some people are uncomfortable when a woman refuses to soften her voice. A few audience members applauded, others didn't. Jimmy nodded quickly. Totally, I get that, but you're still asking, Meghan said, which tells me you don't. Jimmy opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched. He tried again, lighter. I just think sometimes, when people watch, from home, they want connection. Meghan's eyes hardened. Connection doesn't mean access. No, Jimmy said carefully. But access is kind of the point of television. She leaned toward him slightly now, lowering her voice just enough to feel deliberate. And that's exactly why I choose my words carefully. Jimmy swallowed. Okay. He glanced at the audience, searching for oxygen. We're gonna play a quick game. Super quick. No, Meghan said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was final. Jimmy blinked. No, as in, no games, she said. No bits, no cute segments. The audience reacted immediately. Gasps, whispers, confusion. Jimmy forced a laugh. All right, no games, just conversation. Then have one, Meghan replied. Stop hiding behind format. That line hit harder than anything before. Jimmy sat back slightly. For the first time, the smile faded completely. Meghan, he said, more seriously now, I'm not hiding, I'm hosting. And I'm not performing, she shot back. So, if this doesn't work for you, Jimmy raised a hand gently. It does work for me. Meghan's eyes flicked to his hand, then back to his face. Does it? The audience was no longer on his side, or hers. They were just watching, stunned. Jimmy took a breath. Let me ask you one last thing. Meghan crossed her arms loosely. Go on? He hesitated. The pause felt dangerous. Do you think, Jimmy said slowly, that sometimes humor lands wrong because people aren't sure if they're allowed to laugh? A few nervous laughs slipped out, proof of the point. Meghan stared at the audience, then back at Jimmy. If people are afraid to laugh, she said, maybe it's because they're laughing at someone instead of with them. Jimmy nodded. That's fair. She leaned back, voice cooling. And I won't be that someone. The room felt tight now, compressed. Jimmy glanced off stage briefly, toward producers who were very still. All right, he said, voice steady but subdued. We're almost out of time. Meghan's eyes narrowed. Already? Jimmy nodded. Yeah. She smiled, finally, but it wasn't warm. Good, she said. The audience murmured again, confused. Jimmy forced a closing tone. When we come back, we'll wrap things up. The band started to play, but it was softer this time, hesitant, unsure. As the cameras pulled back, Meghan leaned toward Jimmy and said something under her breath, quiet enough to miss the microphones. Jimmy's expression changed instantly. He nodded once. When the cameras came back for the final segment, one thing was clear to everyone in the room. This wasn't going to end politely, and Meghan Markle was already halfway out the door. When the cameras came back on for the final segment, the studio felt different. Not louder, not angrier, quieter. The kind of quiet that makes every movement feel amplified, every breath noticeable. Jimmy Fallon sat a little straighter in his chair, hands resting flat on his desk. The playful rhythm he usually carried had drained away, replaced by something careful and restrained. This wasn't damage control anymore. This was containment. Meghan Markle sat beside him on the couch, posture flawless, chin lifted, gaze steady. She looked composed, but not relaxed. There was a tightness in her jaw now, a barely concealed impatience that hadn't been there at the start of the show. Jimmy cleared his throat. All right, he said softly. We're almost out of time. A few audience members shifted in their seats. No laughter, no applause. Meghan nodded once. Good. Jimmy glanced at her, then back to the camera. Before we wrap up, I just want to say, thank you for coming on. I know conversations like this can be complicated. Meghan's eyes stayed on him. Complicated, she repeated. That's one word for it. Jimmy offered a small, diplomatic smile. It's never my intention to make a guest feel uncomfortable. Meghan tilted her head. Intent doesn't erase outcome. The phrase landed again, heavier than before. Jimmy inhaled slowly. He chose his words with care now, each one measured. I think sometimes humor misfires, not because it's cruel, but because the room isn't sure what's allowed anymore. The audience remained silent, listening. Meghan leaned forward slightly. What's allowed, she said calmly, is respect. Jimmy nodded. I agree. Then maybe, Meghan continued, this format isn't built for the kind of conversation you claim to want. Jimmy's eyebrows lifted just a fraction. This format is built for connection. Meghan smiled faintly. Connection requires consent. A murmur rippled through the audience. Jimmy paused. For the first time that night, he didn't try to smooth it over with a joke. Meghan, he said, voice steady but sincere, I don't think anyone here is trying to take something from you. Meghan sat back, crossing her arms. Impact doesn't require intent. The air felt thick now, like something had reached its limit. Jimmy nodded slowly, accepting the stalemate. Okay. He turned toward the audience, shifting into a closing tone. Well, that's all the time we have. Meghan interrupted him. No, she said. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, but it stopped everything. Jimmy turned back to her. No? Meghan stood. The movement was smooth, deliberate, unmistakable. The sound of her heels against the stage floor cut sharply through the silence. I didn't come here to be framed, she said, voice controlled but firm. I didn't come here to be laughed at, analyzed, or reduced to a punchline. Jimmy stood as well, not in confrontation, but instinctively. Meghan, I'm not finished, she said, holding up a hand. The audience froze. This is exactly what I mean, Meghan continued. People smile, joke, soften things, then act surprised when someone finally refuses to play along. Jimmy's expression stayed calm, but his eyes showed surprise now. I'm not trying to... You are, she said, and you always have been. That landed hard. Jimmy opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing he could say that wouldn't escalate it further. Meghan turned toward the audience. You're taught to laugh, she said, gesturing toward the seats. You're taught what's acceptable to question and what isn't. And when someone pushes back, suddenly they're difficult. No one clapped, no one laughed. Meghan reached down, picked up her microphone, and held it for a moment. The camera zoomed in instinctively. Then she placed it gently on the couch. I won't participate in this, she said quietly. Jimmy nodded once, respectfully. That's your choice. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time all night. And that, she said, is the first honest thing you've said. She turned and walked toward the edge of the stage. The audience gasped. A few stood up without realizing it. Others stared, stunned, unsure whether they were witnessing a statement or a breakdown. Jimmy remained standing, hands at his sides, watching her go. Meghan, he started, then stopped himself. The band didn't play. The studio doors closed behind her with a soft but final sound. For a moment, no one spoke. Jimmy turned back toward the camera, exhaled slowly, and offered a small, controlled smile, the kind that comes from professionalism, not comfort. Well, he said quietly, we're going to take a break. The screen faded. Within minutes, clips of the walkout would flood social media. Headlines would argue whether Meghan had been provoked or protected herself. Fans would split into sides. Commentators would dissect every word. But inside the studio, long after the lights dimmed, one thing lingered. Not the jokes, not the questions. The silence that followed when someone finally decided they'd had enough. Some guests leave to applause, others leave behind a moment no one can explain away. Was Meghan Markle right to walk out, or did the jokes simply hit too close to home? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy tense, slow-burn interview, stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next uncomfortable moment is always just one question away.